Well, we covered this yesterday, didn't we? The racist abuse that Vinicius Jr suffered in Real Madrid's clash with Valencia. This is what he had to say after the match, in case you missed it. Racism is normal in La Liga. The competition thinks it's normal, so does the federation, and the opponents encourage it. I'm so sorry. The championship that once belonged to Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, Cristiano and Messi today belongs to the racists. More on this. I want to welcome to the show Shaka Hislop is here, Alex Kirkland as well. But first, Gustavo Hofman is here as our colleague at ESPN Brazil. Gustavo, how has this been received in Brazil, watching one of their own treated in this manner?
Hello, everybody. Well, in Brazil, the reaction is very, very high. Everybody in Brazil is talking about the president of Brazil talking about it. So in Brazil, today is the main topic in everything you talk in Brazil. About Vinicius Jr. I talked to some sources also. In the last weeks, the staff of Vinicius Jr. talked to him about the possibility of leaving Real Madrid because of the racist abuse that has suffered in the last month here in Spain. Vinicius doesn't want to leave Real Madrid. He didn't even consider it when people talked with him about it, when his staff talked to him about it. But another source that I talked to late Sunday told me that Vinicius is at his limit. And some moments later, he made it public when he wrote in his social media that he will fight racism even far from Spain. So the situation now is very critical for Vinicius, for everybody in Brazil who is talking about it. And Vinicius is suffering a lot because of the racist abuse, because of the treatment that he has received from the referees, and also because of nothing that happens after everything that has suffered.
And this is it. What has been so mind-boggling about this coverage? You just see it universally. People have condemned the racists, showing their support for Vinicius Jr., with the exception of a man who you think would be fighting to save the reputation of La Liga. Of course, Tebas came out, responded to Vinicius Jr., and then went double down on it today, saying neither Spain nor La Liga are racist. It's very unfair to say that. At La Liga, we denounce and tackle racism with all the toughness within our powers. This season, racist insults have been reported 9 times. 8 of them have been for insults against Vinny. We always identify these maniacs and file a complaint with the relevant bodies. It doesn't matter how few they are, we are always relentless. Alex Kirkland, who is with us, of course, is our Madrid reporter with ESPN. What is so striking about this and how tone-deaf it seems to be, Alex, it's like, look, we've done our bit, we've reported to the authorities, they didn't convict these people, it's not our fault. And how can you come out and say you're not racist when you've got hundreds of fans within your stadium, within your tournament, chanting monkey at a black player?
I think at the very least, in terms of PR, it's incredibly misguided, this response from Javier Tebas. We understand that he wants to defend his league and he wants to point out the steps that La Liga have been taking, and they have been taking some steps to try and deal with this. But quite clearly, it's not enough. And I think that the initial response from someone like Tebas in a position like his after an incident like this should be one of support for Vinicius, saying that we're with Vinicius, this is what we're doing. Of course, there's lots more that we can do, and we're going to do that. But instead, taking this kind of quite combative approach, almost kind of picking a fight with Vinicius on social media, I think is very, very strange. And it's quite clear that whatever is being done, and like I say, La Liga have been taking some steps, it's not enough because this keeps happening over and over again. We're into double figures now over the last year or so in terms of these incidents. And that's just incidents involving Vinicius Jr, not any other player, and just those that have been kind of formalised and reported. So who knows how many more incidents haven't actually gone through that process. So it keeps happening. Maybe, I mean, let's hope, maybe this is something of a tipping point and the start of some kind of change because of the reaction, I think, of Vinicius Jr this time, firstly on the pitch at Mestalla, pointing out the guy that was making monkey gestures at him specifically and saying, you know, this guy has racially abused me. And then the stance that he's taken subsequently as well with those statements that you just referred to on social media. Maybe we're finally going to start seeing some more serious action taken on this. The argument from La Liga's side is, look, this is what we're doing. Whenever this happens, we are gathering the evidence, we're passing it on to prosecutors who can then look to bring charges against these individuals. Now, what's the problem with that? The problem is that in several of these cases, we've seen prosecutors deciding not to take any further action, not to press charges, not to pursue a case, either because they say there isn't enough evidence, or one bizarre case after some similar chanting ahead of the Madrid derby earlier in the season, prosecutors decided not to press charges, saying that it hadn't reached the level necessary to be a criminal offence, even though this was a crowd of people singing "Vinicius, you are a monkey." So you're seeing these prosecutors not sort of dropping the ball and not taking these cases further. So if that's happening, and if that keeps happening, and it's happened on numerous occasions, what needs to happen? Well, the league needs to take further action, and the clubs need to take further action. Now, in fairness, some clubs have done that. We've seen that from clubs like Real Mallorca, like Real Valladolid, where we've seen some of these racist incidents involving Vinicius over the last year. They've identified fans and they've banned fans. And Valencia today came out and said that they will ban fans for life who are identified as having been involved here. One fan has already been identified by police, and they're working on identifying others. So some clubs are taking action. But like I say, this keeps happening. And yes, it's a bigger problem. Of course, it's a bigger problem about Spanish society, and racism is an issue in Spain. But there's still more, I think, that football could be doing to control what it can control, which is what happens inside these stadiums.
I think by Javier Tebas' rhetoric alone, multiple times his position to me should be untenable. Now, I presume he's got a boss or a committee or people who put him in place and the place that he's in. But this is a guy who gets a bee in his bonnet when other leagues spend money, and he perceives that to be outspending what his league and his teams and the teams within his organisation can spend, and a lack of sporting integrity. He has a bee in his bonnet about that. He has a bee in his bonnet, and I remember when Barcelona were having all their problems and they're still working their way through it, and they were bringing Lewandowski in. Oh, he was out chiming about the potential signing of Lewandowski and how Barcelona were going to be able to do this, and they can't sign Lewandowski, they need to do this and they need to do that. He's very active in all these other matters. But yet, he'll make a statement on all these racist incidents, and as you said, he'll pass on the relevant complaints and information to the legal authorities and the police for criminal prosecutions. But his league, the governing body of these teams, is doing nothing about it, basically doing nothing about it. And I think that makes his position, in my view, untenable. When it's a bigger problem for other countries to be spending money, it's a bigger problem for teams within his league to be potentially outspending their budget. He's worried about that, but he's not worried about the continuous racist problems that a lot of these players, but particularly these Real Madrid players, particularly Vinicius Jr, and I think Rodrigo's had some as well, and I'm thinking about the effigy at one point a few months ago off a bridge and all that sort of stuff. Come on. We cannot sit here and continually have the same conversation with the same outcome. It is not fair on these players to have to... This is not the early 1900s. It's not fair on these players to have to go through this scenario in the current climate, 2023, that we're in. We should be in a situation now where these things are just being dealt with in a much more proper manner than which they are. Not just through the criminal proceedings, but through the power that LaLiga should have to bring some sort of sanctions on the clubs and not allow the clubs themselves to say, oh, we'll deal with this. Don't you worry about it, we've got it. And I just don't think, and I know every league is different, but I do not think that is good enough or acceptable.
And to that point, we'll go to Shaka in a moment. Alex, I just wanted to talk about what La Liga have the power to do. I understand when it comes to criminal prosecution, that is out of their hands. That's why we talk about giving it to the authorities. But surely they could, for example, close a stand, or they could deduct points for racist behaviour or chuck you out of the Copa del Rey. Make a real statement. That's got nothing to do with criminal. That's to do with football, isn't it? And surely they have the powers within them to do that.
Well, ultimately, La Liga is an association of the clubs that make it up, and they can get together and decide to take the action that they want to take in terms of partial stadium closures or stadium closures. Other issues would fall under the competence of the Spanish Football Federation. So something like the Copa del Rey that you mentioned, that's the Spanish Football Federation's competition. So that would be more problematic. But there are absolutely things that La Liga and the clubs could get together and decide to put into place. Of course, the issue for some of these clubs is, do they really want to follow through on that? And how drastic would the consequences be if they were really looking at stand closures or stadium closures? Would the clubs be willing to take that kind of drastic action? But the bottom line is the image of La Liga globally is being damaged so badly by discussions like this, and similar discussions like this are happening on in the media all over the world right now. I think that damage is huge, and this could be happening with any player, and it would be serious if it was happening with any player. But it just happens that it's happening with the brightest young star in La Liga and maybe the most exciting player to watch in world football right now, Vinicius Jr. And so, for the league as well, even just thinking about the league's kind of own interests, let alone sort of talking about kind of justice and what is right, they need to protect this star, this huge asset that they've got, even in their own interests, let alone anything else. And so, like I say, maybe now and maybe this time we're going to see further steps being taken. But it's a difficult one, and it's like I say, there are some issues around exactly what they can do. But ultimately, the clubs and the league can get together, and if they wanted to, they could take much more drastic action for sure.
How impressed are you, Shaq, with the way that Vinicius Jr has conducted himself over the last 24 hours?
Incredibly. Listen, he's not in an easy position. It's a very difficult position for Vinicius Jr. And one that he's trying to navigate and doing so wonderfully well. I think to Alex's point, this racist abuse is targeted at Vinicius not just because of the club he represents, not just because of how bright a star he is, but because he's been so vocal about the issues. Racists will attack those players who call them out, who are vocal about combating racism and seeing that the authorities live up to their promise within the game. And Vinicius is all of those. So hence the attacks won't stop. My concern here in going forward is that the league simply won't do enough. There won't be any impetus. Spanish football is 3 games away from the end of the season. We lose momentum once the season is over. And as a result, come August, these issues will be long forgotten. We'll be discussing transfers and new signings and who's favourite to win the league and Champions League. And the underlying issues will remain. Tebas will continue to do as he has and deny in the way that he has. And to one of the earlier questions, Dan, about about the reporting of these incidents, and Tebas saying, well, there've been nine official reports, 8 of those from Vinicius. If I'm Vinicius Jr, what's my motivation to file a report at this point? Every single other report I've filed has warranted, has seen nothing happen. Even when I haven't filed a report and the abuse is there for everybody to see, as it was against Valencia, nothing is done. The referee stopped the game for an announcement over the tannoy to stop racist chanting, but in his report spoke about articles being thrown onto the pitch. So you can't even trust the referee to accurately report racist abuse when it happens. So what's the point? If I'm Vinicius Jr, what is the point of me filing an official complaint? So Tebas can hide behind that or hide behind his hands being tied. At some point, either the league has to act, UEFA has to step in, or FIFA. I'll be honest, I don't trust UEFA or FIFA themselves. I think they're happy to take as wide a berth of this as they possibly can. And Spanish football will continue to kind of drag itself down up until Real Madrid or Barcelona simply walk off the field and refuse to take part and force the league into taking meaningful action. We just keep having these same conversations. We keep hearing the same diatribe from Tebas, and we just keep having to feel sorry for Vinicius Jr. while he confronts an issue that is a whole lot bigger than him.
Gustavo, Vinicius Jr. is a long line of stars that have come from South America. How much does the treatment that he has received since playing for Real Madrid, certainly over the last couple of seasons, going to put people off, put those young black stars coming over from Brazil or Argentina, how much is going to make them second guess going to play in Spain and maybe head elsewhere?
For sure it will contribute, because Vinicius is a star in Brazil. Vinicius is one of the best Brazilian players, maybe the best Brazilian player at this moment. He's a star for the Brazilian national team. He was a star playing for Flamengo, the club with more fans in Brazil. So everything that is happening, it will have consequence in the future, for sure. And Vinicius is very, very upset about everything that is happening, about the treatment that he has received from the referees. I can give an example also. For example, Vinicius has received this season 16 yellow cards. Only one yellow card was outside Spain. All the 15 yellow cards were here in Spain, in La Liga and Copa del Rey. Vinicius is very, very upset about his treatment in the fields of Spain. The problem with La Liga is that La Liga insists to say that they are not racist, and when they should act against the racists who are in La Liga. And Vinicius knows that, everybody knows that, but Javier Tebas, it seems that he really doesn't know that. But as I told you, Vinicius doesn't want to leave Real Madrid. He wants to stay here and fight against racism, but he's really at his limits.
What was striking, Alex, from these videos that we saw was almost the arrogance of it. The people were posting this on social media and knowing there wasn't really going to be any repercussions because, well, why would there? Because they've got away with it for so long.
Yeah, I mean, there is an issue with racism here in Spain, and it can be quite shocking, I think, for some of us who come from another country and come and live in Spain, and you see it in day-to-day life. There is an ignorance around issues of race, and one of the places that's expressed is within football stadiums. Like I say, that of course is a much bigger issue. Who knows how long that takes to be addressed? But we can surely tackle what happens inside football stadiums. But yes, it's a bit of a vicious cycle in the sense that some of these fans, I mean, it's not any kind of justification whatsoever. It's completely unjustifiable. But they will see it as an attempt to wind up the player. They will see it as an attempt to incite Vinicius to lose his head or to get sent off, as happened here at Mestalla. So maybe that's part of the motivation. It's hard to say. It's hard to get inside these people's heads. But yes, there's undoubtedly. I mean, when you look at this footage, it's shocking, it's distressing, it's upsetting. And when you see the quantity of the number of these videos, not just in this game at Mestalla, but these incidents over the course of the last year or so, and Vinicius put out this video on social media this evening, kind of compiling incident after incident after incident, using footage from all of these different stadiums all over Spain of the racist abuse that he's suffered. It breaks your heart, really, to see a young player having to go through this. And I think it's pretty remarkable that he's managed to kind of deal with it as well as he has, given that circumstance.
Shaka mentioned FIFA, Infantino to Instagram to pass his sympathies, I suppose, along to Vinicius. But he also said, this is why we need to implement these 3 steps. Firstly, you stop the match, you announce it. Secondly, the players leave the pitch. And the speaker announces that if the attack continue, the match will be suspended. The match restarts. And then thirdly, if the attack continue, the match will stop. And the 3 points will go to the opponent. Shaka, this clearly isn't working.
There's a couple of things about this and Infantino's statement. First of all, one of Infantino's earliest acts as FIFA president was to disband the anti-racism task force, the FIFA anti-racism task force. So that kind of clearly showed what his thinking was, that those systems that were in place back then were good enough. It didn't warrant revisiting. I think the issues are far deeper than just leaving those issues in place. But it kind of signaled his intentions as FIFA president to kind of steer clear of this. To your point, those issues are not working, and we can hide behind protocols as much as we want. But if the evidence has shown that those issues are not having an impact, then you have to revisit. Then you have to come up with new protocols. But again, without that racism task force, without any revisiting of those protocols, we're going to have the same issues, the same problems, the same inaction, and the same football administrators hiding behind some kind of false facade that again continues to fail black players, continues to fail football at large.
I want to welcome in former Premier League referee Mark Clattenburg is with us. Mark, how much pressure is there on referees to act in these situations, and should it be down to the officials, or do they need help?
Of course, they're always going to need help, Dan. I think everybody has a role to play in this. I looked at Infantino's statement, and this three-point protocol has always been in place. It was in place when I was a referee with UEFA. And UEFA were very strong, and they said that, you know, as a referee, we have a responsibility that if we have a player that is racially abused or we hear racial chants inside the stadium, we follow the three-point protocol. And, you know, we saw games where there was a suspension for a few minutes. And, you know, we don't want to see teams walk off the pitch. We want to see great football. However, everybody has a part to play in this. And I think referees also have to be strong, that if this is multiple times in Spain, then the Spanish referees and the associations need to be strong and follow a plan that everybody accepts. And if the match gets suspended or cancelled, then this is probably the only way we can stop it.
How do you handle it, Shaq? Like, who do you give the responsibility to? Because it's a lot to ask of the players, it's a lot to ask of the referees.
I think, well, obviously the primary responsibility is to La Liga, but they have shared that responsibility. I continue to believe that FIFA, as a world governing body, have to have a more significant say around protocols and how leagues are to manage incidents such as this. Their responsibility goes far further than just the World Cup. They have to send down direction, and whether that direction comes straight from them to La Liga or goes through UEFA, choose your path. UEFA as well have to let it be known that unless there is significant action taken in this league, then La Liga will face some sanction from them as well, whether it's a suspension of clubs participating, be it in the Champions League or Europa League, or whatever it may be, a reduction of numbers of clubs that qualify for those competitions. They have tools at their disposal that they can also use, because this reflects just as badly on UEFA. La Liga and Spanish football are member associations of UEFA. They are the governing body. They are the parent to this. They have as much a reason to see this dealt with in an appropriate manner as any. But while FIFA fails, while UEFA fails, while La Liga fails, it's left to the players. And as I said yesterday, I never advocate for the primary response to be for players to walk off the field. But if all those institutions continue to fail the game as they have, the players will be left with no other choice. And until that day, maybe when a Real Madrid or Barcelona or some club of the sort walks off the field and refuses to come back on, accepts whatever punishment comes, and makes this into a real domestic issue for them, a bigger domestic issue than it is right now, you'll continue to see this lack of action. Right now it's becoming a bigger global issue than I think Tebas and La Liga recognizes. It needs to hit home, close to home.
I agree with Shaq 100%. If the larger governing bodies are not going to intervene then, and we're leaving it to LaLiga, who seem incapable or unwilling, whichever one path you want to go down, to deal with this, I think it becomes incumbent on, in this occasion, the player's employer, Real Madrid, to protect the player or players. As Shaq said, be it, well, we don't like to see it, be it walking off the field, or indeed turning up at a game and refusing to play and getting back on the bus and leaving. There is no game. Now, I know there's consequences, I know there's relegation battles, I know there's other things, but they're less important at this moment in time than the problems that these particular players are facing. And ultimately, Vinicius Jr is an employee of Real Madrid, and his bosses, if nobody else is doing anything about it, really have to protect him and others who are facing this. If nobody else is going to do it, the club has to do it themselves. And until such a time that rattles the cages properly of those that need to make bigger decisions, I think we're just going to be having the same conversation. Be it at the end of this season, which as Shaq mentioned is not far away, and as everything's brushed under the carpet and we roll out next year for the La Liga season again, do you think this is going to go away? It's not. It's not.
Alex, obviously, the La Liga is competing with the Premier League, if you like. How conscious are those in Spain and those around the league, are they of this situation dragging them down and down and just affecting their reputation going forward?
I think if they weren't aware before, they are certainly aware now, because, like I say, the kind of global scale of this particular story and this issue surely has to drive it home. And like I say, it's in La Liga's best interest because, like you say, they are looking to compete with the Premier League. They're looking to grow the league as a global product. And you cannot do that if your brand is tainted by association with racism. That's absolutely toxic for any brand. They can't allow that to continue. Just to go back to the idea of teams walking off the pitch, I think it would be an incredibly powerful statement if a team like Real Madrid did that. The Real Madrid players were ready to do that at Mestalla. Thibaut Courtois said after the game, if Vinicius had said he didn't want to carry on, he wanted us to go off, we would have all supported him in that. Vinicius initially said that he didn't want to carry on playing, but then after discussions with Ancelotti, with the referee, decided to carry on. But yeah, there is kind of too much responsibility really being placed on the players, and in particular on the victim here, which is Vinicius, because as I say, the reason all this has become such a big story is because Vinicius was brave enough to stand up and call these fans out. That's the only reason that this was brought to the referee's attention on the night. And that's the difficulty, I think, for referees as well, because in a lot of these cases with Vinicius, we're not talking necessarily about kind of mass chanting from a huge body of fans inside the stadium that a referee would necessarily hear or be made aware of. In quite a number of these cases, it's relatively, at least what we have documented, relatively small numbers of fans and this racist chanting being picked up by pitch-side microphones and things like that. And the referee might even not necessarily be aware of it at the moment. And so in the moment. And so if that's the case, there's no opportunity to put into place these anti-racism protocols that we're talking about.
And obviously, Alex, looking forward, there needs to be some sort of self-policing as well, isn't it, amongst the fans?
Yes, of course. And that's part of the problem, because as long as these fans feel comfortable standing there among their own fans and doing monkey chants or calling Vinicius a monkey, and clearly they feel comfortable enough to do that, they're doing that, then it's not going to change. At the same time, I think it's difficult for the other fans around them. Of course, in an ideal world, you want the fans to challenge this behaviour and to call it out. But that's also not an easy thing necessarily to do in these kind of circumstances. Of course, that's the ideal scenario. But in a lot of these situations, I think it would be quite, you can imagine putting yourself in that situation. That might be kind of difficult and you wouldn't quite know what to do or how to handle it. So yes, of course, self-policing is the ideal. And you'd like to think that a lot of these fans would be called out. But like I say, being based here in Spain, there isn't the awareness of issues of race that you would see in other countries and that you would like to see in it. And it's definitely something that needs to change too.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.